Breaking news overnight, 16 years after murdering Bobby Joe Stinnett, Lisa Montgomery has been put to death.
On December 16, 2004, in the quiet town of Skidmore, Missouri, a crime was committed that would later be described as one of the most disturbing acts ever prosecuted by the federal government. It did not involve a robbery. It did not involve a mass shooting. It did not begin with violence. It began with deception. 31-year-old Bobby Joe Stinnett was 8 months pregnant. She was preparing for the birth of her first child, a baby girl. Friends described her as gentle, trusting, and excited about becoming a mother. That trust would cost her life. Earlier that day, Bobby Joe welcomed a woman into her home. A woman she believed was a fellow dog breeder interested in purchasing a puppy. The woman's name was Lisa Montgomery. What Bobby Joe didn't know was that Lisa Montgomery was not pregnant. Despite telling nearly everyone in her life that she was not there for a dog. She was there for Bobby Joe's unborn child. At some point inside that home, Lisa Montgomery attacked Bobby Joe Stinnett. She strangled her. As Bobby Joe lost consciousness and then her life, Lisa Montgomery did something almost unimaginable. Using a kitchen knife, she cut open Bobby Joe's abdomen and removed the unborn baby from her womb. Bobby Joe Stinnett bled to death on the floor of her own home. Her baby survived. Lisa Montgomery left the house with the newborn child, placing the infant into a car seat and driving away as if nothing had happened. Within hours, she would present the baby as her own, claiming she had just given birth. But the lie would not last. What followed was a nationwide investigation, a swift arrest, and a case that would raise questions not only about guilt, but about mental illness, responsibility, and the limits of justice. And 16 years later, it would end in an execution. This is the story of Lisa Montgomery, and the final 24 hours before she became the first woman executed by the U.S. federal government in nearly 70 years. To understand how Lisa Montgomery committed such an unimaginable crime, investigators would later say you first have to understand the life she lived long before December 2004. Because this crime did not come out of nowhere. Lisa Montgomery's childhood was marked by severe, prolonged abuse. Abuse so extreme that even seasoned psychologists would later struggle to describe it without hesitation. From a young age, Lisa was subjected to repeated sexual assaults, not by strangers, but by men allowed into her home. And according to court testimony, her own mother not only failed to protect her, she enabled the abuse. Lisa grew up in an environment where violence was normal, where boundaries did not exist, and where trauma was never addressed. By the time she reached adulthood, the damage was already deeply ingrained. Mental health experts later diagnosed Lisa Montgomery with severe post-traumatic stress disorder, dissociative disorders, and brain damage linked to repeated trauma. She suffered from episodes where she would detach from reality, losing awareness of her surroundings, her actions, and sometimes even her own identity. But despite these diagnoses, Lisa managed to appear functional on the surface. She married, she had children. She tried to build a life that resembled normalcy. But beneath that surface, something was unraveling. In the years leading up to the murder, Lisa Montgomery began telling people that she was pregnant. She told her husband, her family, her co-workers. She bought maternity clothes. She decorated a nursery. She attended baby showers. But there was one problem. She wasn't pregnant. Medical records later showed she could not have been. And yet, she continued the lie. Psychologists would later testify that Lisa had become psychologically fixated on the idea of having a baby. Not just wanting one, but needing one to maintain her grip on reality. The pregnancy lie became the center of her world. As her fabricated due date approached, panic set in. There was no baby, no hospital records, no explanation that could hold. And that's when the unthinkable plan formed. Through online dog breeding forums, Lisa Montgomery came into contact with Bobby Joe Stinnett. Bobby Joe was trusting, friendly, open. She believed she was meeting another breeder. Lisa Montgomery was looking for something else entirely. By December 2004, Lisa's false pregnancy had reached its breaking point, and in her fractured mental state, she convinced herself of one thing, that taking a baby was the only way to keep her life from collapsing. The crime that followed would shock the nation, but the legal battle that followed would be just as complex. Because when the case went to court, the question was no longer what Lisa Montgomery did. It was whether she fully understood it. Lisa Montgomery was arrested less than 24 hours after the murder of Bobby Joe Stinnett. The newborn child was found alive and returned to her father. The physical evidence was overwhelming. There was no dispute about who committed the crime. Lisa Montgomery confessed. But from the very beginning, this case was never just about guilt. It was about mental responsibility. During the trial, prosecutors laid out the facts in stark, unflinching detail. They described how Bobby Joe was strangled, how her abdomen was cut open, how her unborn child was removed while she was still alive. The courtroom sat in silence as medical examiners testified that Bobby Joe Stinnett may have remained conscious for part of the attack. The jury was shown photographs, they heard recordings, they listened to Lisa's confession. For the prosecution, the case was clear. This was a calculated, premeditated murder, carried out with the intent to steal a child. And under federal law, that crime carried only one possible punishment: death. The defense told a different story. They did not deny what Lisa Montgomery had done. Instead, they focused on who she was and what had been done to her. Mental health experts testified that Lisa suffered from severe dissociative disorders. They described a woman who, under extreme stress, could lose touch with reality entirely. One psychiatrist stated that during the crime, Lisa may have been experiencing a psychotic break, operating in a dissociated state, unable to fully comprehend her actions, but the jury was not convinced. In 2007, Lisa Montgomery was convicted of federal murder and sentenced to death. She became the only woman on federal death row. The case became a national flashpoint. Human rights organizations called for clemency. Psychiatrists warned of a dangerous precedent. Victims' advocates demanded justice for Bobby Joe Stinnett. Presidents were petitioned. Courts were flooded with last-minute appeals. And yet, the execution date remained. By January 2021, after more than a decade on death row, Lisa Montgomery's fate was sealed. The only question left was how her final hours would unfold. On January 12, 2021, Lisa Montgomery spent her final full day at the Federal Medical Center in Carswell, Texas. She was 52 years old. In the hours leading up to her execution, Montgomery met with her attorneys and spiritual advisors. She was reported to be calm, quiet, and compliant. No chaos, no outbursts, no last-minute confessions. She declined a final meal. She spoke briefly with prison staff, and shortly before midnight, she was escorted into the execution chamber. At 1:31 a.m. on January 13, 2021, Lisa Montgomery was pronounced dead by lethal injection. Her final words were directed to the family of Bobby Joe Stinnett. She expressed remorse. She asked for forgiveness. And then the drugs took effect. Lisa Montgomery became the first woman executed by the federal government since 1953. Her death closed one chapter, but it did not end the debate surrounding her case. Some viewed the execution as justice long delayed. Others saw it as a failure to properly address severe mental illness. What remains undeniable is this: Bobby Joe Stinnett never got to see her child grow up, and a crime born of deception, obsession, and violence left two families forever changed. This was the final 24 hours of Lisa Montgomery. As the final chapter closes on the case of Lisa Montgomery, we are reminded of the devastating consequences of unchecked violence and the fragile line between justice and tragedy. If you found this story compelling, make sure to like this video and subscribe to True Crime Watch. Hit the bell icon so you never miss another story from the final 24 hours of some of the world's most notorious offenders. Comment below your thoughts on this case and stay tuned for more chilling accounts of crime, punishment, and the final hours that define them.